Well, hello everybody. Well, this video is part of a crazy day again, I'm afraid, but a very sad one. Unfortunately, when I got to the station this morning, and I'm about 300 miles away from London, the train was cancelled. But I took an earlier train. I was there lucky and I got an earlier train, but this was a one carriage, small little local train sort of thing to get me to one of the cities I could take another train from. And unfortunately, the train, I was pretty well behind the driver, and the train hit a person and killed them. And it wasn't the driver's fault, I can promise you that. He blew the horn and everything, but it was a pretty bad experience. And so we were there for hours because obviously it's a crime scene then and has to be investigated and so on. So I was pretty stressed out actually, and but there was no way of getting to London in time. So I contacted the studio and said, I'll try and get back. And after quite a traumatic getting back, which ended up in taxis and everything, I did get back home in time to do an online presence for the programme. So this is the programme. I apologise for being a bit, can I say, emotional or maybe over the top in this programme, but Jim did annoy me, pretty well this time, and I'm really now understand he doesn't even understand the basics of meteorology, let alone climate, and I'll now show you that because there's some issues came up in this which actually shattered me. I now know the ignorance I'm dealing with, to put it bluntly, and of course he started the ad hominem attacks on me as normal, and it was very difficult for me to resist pointing out that he doesn't even understand the basic subject here, because he doesn't. At least I'm telling the truth there. So here we go. I'm going to go through the programme and dissect it as we go. Okay, so another crazy day for Paul Burgess. In fact, it took me 7 hours from leaving home to getting back home without achieving anything except a big circle.
Good afternoon, it's fast approaching 22 minutes after 3 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio, and it's now time for Climate Control, where we look and discuss the debate around the climate. I'm Nana Akua. Now, as EU scientists have said that 2023 was the hottest year on record for the world, the Met Office also reported last week that the UK experienced its second warmest year on record in 2023. So is the world heating up, and is man-made climate change to blame? Well, joining me to discuss, Jim Dale, meteorologist, and also social commentator Paul Burgess. Right, well, I'm going to start with you, Paul Burgess. No, I'll go with Jim, actually, because he's in the studio. Go on, then.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon, Jim.
Yeah, you just opened up with what we've been waiting for, 2023, not just from the reported one that you reported, I forgot who it was, but NOAA, Berkeley Earth, Hadcrux. 6 international data sets have come through in the last 48 hours showing 2023 was indeed exactly what we expected it to be, the hottest year on record, going back to 1850 in some of these data sets.
How many years is that, Jim?
Yeah, it's quite a lot. 1850 as far as we've been measuring it in the modern style.
Something years?
Yeah, nearly 200.
Almost 200 years.
Yeah, getting up for 200 years.
How old is the planet?
It's about 5 billion years, which you don't need to go back that far. No. Let me just say, what's important is what's happened in the last 10 years particularly, and this last 2 years, and what's going to happen next year.
So at this point, Jim has just abandoned any concept of climate. We're just looking at 1, 2 or 3 years. He never seems to get the message that climate has to be considered over a pattern over a long time.
Next year, simply because we're living here now. We don't need to go back to prehistoric times. We're seeing this, and it isn't just land temperatures, by the way, it's also ocean temperatures at record levels in virtually all oceans of the world going last year. This is now indisputable. OK, so those that are denying man-made climate change, and I put that word man-made in there for a good reason.
Well, of course, there we are again, man-made. He provides no evidence for it being man-made anywhere, of course. It's just assumed to be man-made.
Are wrong, absolutely wrong.
All right, well, let me bring Paul in. Paul, he's made quite a few claims there.
OK, well, the first thing is, since 1979, when the satellite record started, I do accept that 2023 was the warmest year. it's 1 year. But the last 6 or 7 years have been pretty well level. Now, the reason I say that is because of the satellite temperature record here. And as you can see, whilst there are cycles there, from around about 2015-16, it's been level. In fact, it was fairly level in a step lower before that and a step lower before that. So why I said that was because it's based on the satellite temperature records. This particular record, which I got as the latest, goes to August 2023, and you can see there are 2 peaks there in the data. The peaks are just weather events. You can't count those years. You have to count both ways, and you have to take the running average, if you like, to get the trend. So the red line is the trend. That's the climate, if you like. But you can get all sorts of individual temperatures. You almost had the same going back here as a hot year. And that was way back in 2000 and, in 1998. So you can't just take individual events like this. You have to look at the whole pattern. And here we see the pattern measured by satellite. And I accept that December, at the end of December 2023, turned out to be the hottest year in this record as an individual year. As regards temperatures, you can't take 1 year. In climate, yet again, you have to look for the pattern. Now, if you look for the pattern, you'll see it very level since 2016. And by the way, this year we've had the North Atlantic decadal oscillation, which is very warm, and this comes on a 65-year cycle. So around about half of that is warm and half of that is cold. We are now coming out of that warm ocean temperature in the North Atlantic, so it hovers between warm and cold every, say, 35 years. We're now entering the cold. In addition to that, the El Nino, which has been very warm this year, is still very strong and probably would last till February, March. We don't know, right? In addition to that, we had a huge amount of water vapor put into the atmosphere from the volcano. Right, but at the moment, China's recording its record low temperatures. Russia is recording its record low temperatures. To give you some aspect as well, Australia has announced 2023, the Met Office there, as the 8th warmest on record. So this is alarmism because they take a short thing. Now, if you've got North Atlantic decadal oscillations lasting 65 years going up and down, that's the whole cycle, you can't just take part of it. Right? And by the way, to warm the ocean takes long time. As I've said before, the ocean is 1,000 times more heat than the atmosphere. But it doesn't warm like instantly. It takes time for the sun's radiation to warm it over.
All right. Well,
and yet, imagine trying to boil a pot of water with a hairdryer. And setting that temperature just to a few degrees above the temperature of the water. How long it would take? Well, it would take you an awful long time. And the same for heating up the oceans. The shortwave radiation coming in from the sun heats the ocean, that's fine. But there's an ocean circulation currents, as we all know, and some of those take hundreds or even up to 1,000 years to complete a cycle. And what we could be seeing in ocean temperatures when they emerge is the result of temperatures set even back to the medieval warm period. That's possible. So it's very, very complicated, this. Also, there's an estimated 30,000 volcanic vents underneath the oceans where the continental plates meet, and not fully understood, but there's certainly heating from them. How significant? Well, the jury's out. It's something I'm studying or researching at the moment, actually. So the jury's out. So there are many different influences. So just to take 1 year temperature records in the ocean, ignoring the El Nino really and the Atlantic oscillation is wrong. It's as simple as that.
Let's give Jim a chance to respond
Paul,
to that.
You're making it up as you go along, really. Because if you look at any graphs, if you look at those graphs, and they're all available on websites, if you go into NOAA or Berkeley Earth or whatever, there's the one. And that isn't what you just described as being, level for the last 10 years or so. Have a look at the face of the Eiger there, nearly, on the right-hand side, OK? That's what scientists, climatologists are worried about. Proper climatologists, Paul, OK? Those that actually get paid for the job. This is what they do.
Hold on. Just because you get paid for a job doesn't mean you're not a proper one. But I mean, that's a bit.
Well, it kind of suggests so, doesn't it?
Not really. I'm not going to say that back.
NASA, NOAA, Berkeley, Earth. These are scientists, climatologists around the world that look at these data sets. They do it meticulously. They're not making it up as they go along. Now we're reaching a stage where the climate deniers have basically.
Can I ask Jim, where are these temperature readings taken? Are they taken from the exact same place every time, or are they taken on runways, or where are those temperature readings?
Now, Nana has made a very good point there. You know, where are these measured? And what you're going to hear is that somehow magically you can record them on runways and runway complexes, and you can allow for the jets blasting over them. This is total nonsense. There's no such thing. Basically, you can't have temperature gauges measuring monitoring climate in urban heat islands, and you certainly can't have them on runways. And what all I'm doing is exposing with all this, which I've done many times, that you can't have a thermometer right by jet engines, right by trucks and everything else, right on the tarmac, right in all that built-up area in a huge urban heat island. You can't do it, and it does change over time. He seems to think there's some magical formula for compensating for that. There isn't.
There's roughly about 8,000, if not slightly more, weather stations in and around the world. Yeah, well, you can say that for many of them. For example, Aberporth, for example, or Aviemore in this country, not airports or anything, but even those, they're meticulously done, so there is no effect from the aeroplanes that take off. Zero effect. Make that absolutely clear. So
how do they know that, though? I mean, you're saying
this is my. I've been doing this for 40 years. I actually did this job.
The amount of years you've been doing it is not really relevant.
Well, it is. It's called experience.
This is about temperature. This is not personal.
Can I interrupt?
This is about where these measurements are being taken. Paul.
I hate appealing to authority, whether it be mine or anyone else's. I try my best not to do it. Sometimes that's difficult. But I've been in charge of a whole country's weather stations. I don't think Jim's ever been in charge of a weather station, except maybe on a boat. So, I don't like saying this because it's irrelevant in effect. My experience, his experience is irrelevant. What matters is evidence. Full stop. Always evidence. I could have replied, of course, to say, when I was in charge of Wales for that work, I was probably the highest paid for my age in the entire British water industry because I was still in my 20s when I made it to that position. But it doesn't matter. I'm not paid now because I'm retired. And isn't it funny that lots of professors, lots of Nobel Prize winners and so on, they speak out once they're retired because their income does not depend on keeping this rubbish going. Right, the graph that's just been shown is not measured temperatures. I dealt with that last week. It's called homogenized temperatures based on models. So it is not measured temperatures. And what they've done is deduct an enormous amount of temperature from the past and add them to the current. That's what they've done to get those. That's why I only accept satellite temperatures, and why I've agreed, since satellite started, 2023 is the warmest year since 1979. But it was warmer in the 1930s than it is today. And we had a medieval warm period, etc., that was much warmer. So to show me a graph that's based on models and let the public think it's based on real data that's measured, no, let me finish. I'm not attacking you personally, which you continually do. I give you the facts every time. This time I've decided
it's fiction
because I've dealt
fiction.
With
it's simple as that. Yeah, look. We can ban this around day after day, week after week. The fact remains that NOAA, NASA, the Met Office, East Anglia University,
they all use the same data set.
Separate data. They do it meticulously. You make it up as you go along. Your balloon has been popped. So has Reform UK's balloon been popped.
You haven't given any evidence in this that it's man-made.
That's his evidence.
So you
can't. Sorry, let Paul carry on. No, Jim. Carry on.
I've just given evidence of the natural cycles, the El Nino and the North Atlantic decical oscillation. Do you accept that North Atlantic oscillation warms the water and cools the water on a 65-year basis? Do you accept that?
No, I don't, to be frank with you.
Now, what Jim has just said is he doesn't accept the Atlantic multi-decadal cycle at all. He doesn't accept it. Okay, So let me show you where that data comes from, because he trusts NOAA and NASA and the Met Office. Well, who do you think monitors that? Who do you think I get the graphs from for that multi-decadal operation? Well, it's the same people, and here we are. If any of you just search for NOAA and the multi-decadal Atlantic cycle, you'll come up straight away on Google with this page. And this is from NOAA. You know, the same people he says I'm going against. This is a man who denies the existence of this effect. So, the first question here, what is the AMO? Answer, the AMO, that's Atlantic Multi-Decadal Oscillation, is an ongoing series of long-duration changes to the sea surface temperature of the North Atlantic Ocean, with the cold and warm phases that may last for 20 to 40 years at a time, and a difference of about 1 degree Fahrenheit between extremes. Well, that may not sound much, 1 degree Fahrenheit, but it's 0.55 degrees C over half a degree C. And don't forget, we've only warmed by about 1.2 degrees C since the Industrial Revolution, 1850. So it's significant. It's very significant. We actually measure the ocean temperatures down to 0.01 degrees C. This graph from NOAA actually shows you where we are now. Coming out of this area here, as we are doing now, and coming out of the El Nino are both the big warming influences on the oceans. And we're coming out of them as well as other factors, which is why I'm predicting a colder future. Well, it's only one of the reasons, actually, but these are major factors. Jim does not even know of them. He doesn't understand the existence of this. But let's continue reading from that NOAA page. These changes are natural and have been occurring for at least the last 1,000 years. Next question. How much of the Atlantic are we talking about? Well, most of the Atlantic between the equator and Greenland changes in unison. Some areas of the North Pacific are also seen to be affected. What phase are we in right now? Well, since the mid-1990s, we've been in a warm phase. By the way, that's coming to an end now. But, you know, this man denies this. Now, the most important aspect I want to say of this, because that shocked me, you have to know this to understand meteorology. You have to know what phase that is in. It may not seem much that different, but because it's an enormous area that's warming, it does have a big effect. He doesn't know of the existence of it, but he lives in the United Kingdom, which is right on it. So any meteorologist would know about this. Just anyone with basic understanding of meteorology would know about it, but this man doesn't. Do you accept that North Atlantic oscillation warms the water and cools the water on a 65-year basis? Do you accept that?
No, I don't, to be frank with you.
And I was shocked at this, and I was angry. I was angry that he even denies its existence, because it's so easy to check upon, and I want to pin him to the ground with this, quite frankly. I got really angry. I was upset that day. I was not in a good mood when I did the broadcast, and I'm sorry for that, but you can understand how amazed I am at this man's ignorance. I think it was at this point that I realised that Jim is not really a weather forecaster. He just is a reporter on other people's forecasts, like the Met Office. So you'll get reports like, yeah, it can snow, it could get down in the north, or it may even reach the Midlands, possibly reach the south. All that is from the Met Office, and it's vague. But he is a reporter on weather. He doesn't actually create the forecasts, and this is why he doesn't know the basics.
But I would accept the El Nino side.
No,
That's part of the equation.
No, you don't. Sorry.
No, I don't.
Sorry, let Paul carry on. He said he doesn't, Paul.
He's trying to make that out to be the reason where we are at this moment in time.
I'm cherry picking, I'm doing this. You always say this, you always try to attack me personally, and you always do that. Let me tell you something. There was a Dr. Mercer. He won the Nobel Prize for Physics in 2022. When he won that, he was invited to give talks everywhere. On what I just said it was 2022. But he repeated 1922, talking over me. Him to talk about was climate models. They thought they had a great physicist, and he is a great physicist. Yes, and they said, let's have a talk on climate models. Unfortunately, he gave his first talk in Korea, and he stood up and said the climate models are rubbish. This is pseudo-science. The whole movement is pseudo-science.
So can I ask, Jim,
now,
the graph...
Yeah. He's been...
It's not what
hang on.
Yeah.
The graph that you gave us, that we put on screen, is that an actual thing, or is it modelling?
That's an actual... They are actual.
Right, I'll bet you now, £100,
global average
I'll bet
global.
£100 now, Jen. That's not true. I'll bet you £100.
He's basically knocking the likes of Noah, Berkeley Earth, Met Office. You sit in a dark room, Paul, making it up as you go along.
Excuse me, you don't know what colour the room is. Well, that is, don't go like that for me.
I'm willing to bet £100
sorry, excuse me. So hang on, Paul. If you both speak, no one will hear either of you. So you're not doing either of yourselves a disservice. So one word from you, Jim. You've got about 30 seconds. Then to you, Paul. Jim.
Yeah, OK. So, look, these stats go along with the incidents in 2023 and before then in terms of records and catastrophes that are going on left, right and centre. This proves the point. Paul's balloon and the climate deniers' balloon has been popped.
Well, that's just, you're just speaking in sort of...
In answer to the graph he gave, in answer to my few seconds I've got left, I'm willing to bet him £100 now online that graph is based on models called homogenization, not actual readings. So do you accept the bet?
Do you accept?
Yeah, I accept the bet because it's ridiculous, Paul. Simple as that. You're doing down NOAA, you're doing down NASA, the Met Office. All of them.
No,
you're better than them.
No, Jim, he's talking about specifically the graph that you...
Yeah, that's absolutely fine by me. I know what they are.
And you said you are saying that is not based on...
That is my job. It's not Paul's job.
I didn't ask you what your job is.
No, you see, you're doing it again. I know a damn sight more than you do. I've climbed a
really?
model. You haven't even done it.
Yeah, you're
a
water resource engineer.
Listen, hold on, hang on.
Sorry.
Listen, if you do that, the pair of you won't be coming back, either of you. So let me be very clear. You do not speak over each other, and more importantly, you do not speak over me. Thank you very much, Paul Burgess, a climate scientist, and also meteorologist Jim Dow. Good to talk to you. Right, this is GB News on TV online.
OK, so I've just demonstrated that Jim doesn't even know basic meteorology, basic things like the Atlantic, the AMO it's called for short. He doesn't know that, even though it's from NASA, even though it's from the Met Office and all the established authorities who monitor it and give me the data. So, I mean, that's incredible to me. But now he's claiming, and he's bet me £100 in public, that graph is not bottled. They're actual readings, are they? Let's take a look at that, shall we? Tony Heller examines meteorological data all over the world in some depth. I'm going to play a small excerpt from one of his videos now. The full video will be linked to in the description below this one.
5 years ago, Senator Ted Cruz used some of my graphs in a hearing. He showed how the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration had altered the U.S. temperature record to turn cooling into warming. They accomplished this by altering past temperatures to make them cooler and by altering recent temperatures to make them warmer. The blue line in this graph represents the actual measured temperatures, and the red line is the altered data which gets released to the public. George Orwell said, "He who controls the past controls the future, and he who controls the present controls the past." Government agencies are hoping to control the politics of the future by changing the temperature record of the past. Not surprisingly, after the hearing, the fact-checkers came out. They said it was absolutely not true that government agencies were changing the historical temperature record. Their argument was that government agencies were altering the data for good reasons, and therefore they weren't actually altering the data. So in other words, the fact-checkers confirmed my graph and confirmed what Senator Cruz said. And then, right after confirming the claim that the data had been altered, they turned around and said the data hasn't been altered. Very Orwellian and exactly what I've come to expect from fact-checkers. But claiming that altered data wasn't altered isn't a very compelling argument. It was pretty obvious that they were tampering with the data, so they came up with a new strategy. The new strategy was to get 5 different supposedly independent groups to come up with the same graph. And since all 5 of them came up with the same graph, it would have to be true. Look how similar those 5 different trends are. These 5 graphs from different agencies line up down to the last wiggle. If 5 different independent groups came up with such similar graphs, that's a pretty strong indication that all of the graphs are accurate. The Earth must be heating up out of control, and it's undoubtedly due to your SUV. But wait a minute, there's a little problem here. This map from NOAA shows all the places where they have daily temperature data from the year 1920. They have almost no data from South America, none from Antarctica, very little from Africa, and very little from most of Asia. The vast majority of the good data is from the United States, which only makes up 2% of the Earth's surface. And for most of the Earth's surface, they have essentially no high-quality data at all. The lack of data creates a huge error bar, probably several degrees. So how did all 5 data sets become so similar, with every single squiggle down to the last detail? Given the fact that most of the Earth's surface has no high-quality data from 1920, there's no possible way that these graphs could be this similar if they were actually independent. 4 years ago, Senator Malcolm Roberts from Queensland was concerned about this very important issue, so he started asking NASA some questions. Senator Roberts sent a letter to Gavin Schmidt at NASA saying, "In Australia, we have considerable concern about temperature adjustments made by NASA over many years, including charts from Iceland. In dropping the temperatures for the early period, the Arctic warmth for the 1930s and 1940s appears to have been removed. What is your specific reason for doing this?" Gavin Schmidt at NASA then responded to Senator Roberts and of course brought the Australian press into it as well. Peter Hannum from the Canberra Times wrote this article on November 21st, 2016. NASA chief slaps down climate skeptic Senator Malcolm Roberts. You hold a number of misconceptions. You appear to hold a number of misconceptions, which I'm happy to clarify at this time. Dr. Schmidt told Senator Roberts in letters and emails obtained by Fairfax Media. The claim that GISS has removed the 1940s warmth in the Arctic is not correct. The claim that NASA tampered with decades-old Arctic data is a favorite conspiracy theory among global warming skeptics. Wow, conspiracy theory, that sounds really bad. We better go look at the data from the NASA website ourselves. All of the graphs I'm about to show you are snapshots of images taken directly from the NASA website. This is the version of Reykjavik, Iceland temperatures from the NASA website from the year 2012. You can see that it was very warm around the year 1940, and recent temperatures have been cooler. And here's another version of the same graph from around the year 2014. You can see that the warmth of the 1940s has disappeared. This was the earlier version, and this was the later version. Here's a more recent version of Reykjavik, Iceland temperatures from the NASA website. The gold line is unadjusted temperatures and the blue line is adjusted temperatures. You can see that the adjustments are removing the warmth of the 1940s. Here's another graph from a different location in Iceland. Once again, the warmth of the 1940s has been removed. And here's another location. The warmth of the past has been removed. And another location. The warmth of the past has been removed. And another one. The warmth of the past has been removed. At every location in Iceland, NASA has adjusted away the warmth of the 1940s. Now let's look again at what Gavin Schmidt told Senator Roberts. The claim that GISS has removed the 1940s warmth in the Arctic is not correct. And then Peter Hannum from the Canberra Times threw in, the claim that NASA tampered with decades-old Arctic data is a favorite conspiracy theory among global warming skeptics. This is some conspiracy theory. If we go to the NASA website, we can see exactly what they did. The 1940s used to be warm, and they made the warmth disappear. Now let's look at the actual response which Gavin Schmidt sent to Senator Roberts to see what's really going on. Gavin Schmidt didn't actually deny that the data was altered. What he said was, firstly, in the graphs you show the data is quite clearly and correctly labeled as originating from GHCN. For your information, GHCN stands for the Global Historical Climatology Network and is a project of the NOAA National Center for Environmental Information. This is a very important piece of information because Gavin Schmidt is saying that the data in their graphs isn't actually their data. They're getting it from NOAA. In that letter, Gavin Schmidt blew their cover. Now we know that these data sets are not independent. NASA is actually getting their data from NOAA, and in fact none of these data sets are independent at all. They all use pretty much the same data, and the quality of the data going back 100 years is not very good. So Gavin Schmidt blew their cover about data independence. The data is not independent at all. Now let's look some more at the Canberra Times article. Here's another quote from Gavin Schmidt. I'm aware of who Malcolm Roberts is, and the only surprise is that he is in fact a senator. Gavin Schmidt from NASA got caught by Senator Roberts using tampered data. So Gavin responded with a nasty comment in order to deflect away from his data tampering. Then Peter Hannum went on. In an email, Trausti Johnson, senior meteorologist with a specialty in historical climatology at the Iceland Meteorological Office, told Senator Roberts that the temperature adjustments are quite sound. So Peter Hannum just told us that the data wasn't being altered, and now he's saying the exact opposite. He's saying that the data is being altered, but the adjustments are sound.
Now, this adjustment mentality goes way back, and I'm going to show you a ClimateGate email now. And what it shows is scientists, this is from East Anglia, Jones from East Anglian University, who was one of the prime movers in this alarmism, and it's an email discussing basically how to change the data. But this is not a scientific discussion, this is trying to get rid of evidence. So let me just read this out to you. Right, I'm going to read out sections. We'll start from, if you look at the attached plot, you'll see that the land also shows a 1940s blip, as if I'm sure you know. So if we could reduce the ocean blip by, let's say, 0.15 degrees C, then this would be significant for the global mean. So in other words, my words now, they're trying to change the global mean, but we still have to explain the land blip. And then, I've chosen the 0.15 here deliberately. This still leaves us with the ocean blip, and I think one needs to have some form of ocean blip to explain the land blip. And it goes on like this, but I'm going to go to the very bottom. It would be good to remove at least part of the 1940s blip. We are still left with the why the blip. This is not a scientific discussion. This is just tampering with data, but it shows an approach. Now, as if things weren't bad enough, the next bit is incredulous. In America, they've closed down 47% of the weather stations. But those weather stations are still giving readings. In other words, it's as if they had not been done away with, and they're modelling the observation. So not just taking the observation as in the others and then adjusting it, modelling the observation to non-existent stations. I will hand over to Tony Heller.
In my previous video, I discussed how NASA has turned a long-term cooling trend in the United States into a warming trend by altering the data. But most of this data tampering is actually done by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which I'll refer to as NOAA. They show a strong warming trend in average maximum U.S. temperatures since 1895. But their thermometer data shows a strong cooling trend. They changed the data from a cooling trend into a warming trend through two adjustments. The first one is the time of observation bias adjustment, and the second is the final adjustment. The actual thermometer data shows that the United States is cooling. But through the use of data tampering, NOAA produces a politically expedient warming trend. The pink lines show the measured cooling trend, and the red lines show the adjusted warming trend. A big part of this adjustment is that they're simply making up data for stations which are no longer reporting. There are 1,280 thermometers in the United States Historical Climatology Network, but since 1989, NOAA has been losing data from these stations. In this year, only 819 stations have reported data. If a station doesn't report temperatures during a particular month, NOAA simply fabricates some temperatures using a computer model. So far this year, 47% of the NOAA data for the United States is fabricated. Not surprisingly, this fake data is producing a warming trend, which is what NOAA wants people to see. Current adjusted temperatures are about 1 degree warmer than the actual measured data. But the adjusted temperatures from 100 years ago are about 1.5 degrees cooler than the actual thermometer data. So NOAA is producing about 2.5 degrees of warming via the process of data tampering. The best way to understand how this fake warming trend is being generated is by looking at some of the stations which NOAA is making up data for. So far this year, NOAA has made up data for 777 out of 1,280 stations in the network. One of these stations is at Lake Itasca, Minnesota. The measured thermometer data shows cooling, but NOAA alters the data to create a strong warming trend. There's no scientific basis for what they're doing. This is just what they want people to see. Here's where the NOAA thermometer was located at Fairmont, Minnesota. The measured data showed cooling, but NOAA alters the data to create a warming trend. The red area shows completely fake data because that station is no longer operational. This is where the thermometer was located at Everglades City, Florida. The thermometer data showed cooling, but NOAA alters the data to create a strong warming trend. And all of this red data is once again fake because that station is no longer operational. This is where the station was located at Lee's Ferry, Arizona, near the Colorado River. The measured data shows cooling, but NOAA alters the data to create a warming trend, and a lot of the recent trend is fake. That station is no longer operational.
To watch the whole movie from Tony, just please click on the link I provided in the description below this video. But I would like now to introduce my star witness for adjusting data. You may know him, but I'll introduce him because what he does is support the fact that you have to adjust the temperature. And in a series of TV episodes, he has reinforced the fact that experts can adjust this to take account of it, so admitting the adjustment.
There's roughly about 8,000, if not slightly more, weather stations in and around the world. Yeah, well, you can say that for many of them. For example, Aberporth, for example, or Aviemore in this country, not airports or anything, but even those, they're meticulously done, so there is no effect from the aeroplanes that take off. Zero effect. Make that absolutely clear. So
thank you, Jim. So to be very clear here, because you can get bursts of heat, because you're right in the middle of an urban heat island that changes over time and fluctuates throughout the 24 hours, even quite a lot, I would think, there's no possible way of adjusting that data. It's dirty data. It can't be used. But in Jim's world, in Jim Dale's world, they can magically adjust it to make it meticulous. So what is homogenization? Because it's used on all the data in Jim's graph. And what it is in theory, a means of quality controlling data so as to correct errors in it, and then you adjust the data. Now, in this particular bet, all I have to show is that it's adjusted, not go into the quality of the adjustments, but they're all adjusted. And what they do is they look at a station and say, that's out of sync. I mean, the nearby stations don't make sense, so let's adjust them all. That's basically what they do. But the tendency has always been to warm everything up. That has been the effect. You've just seen the result in the case of Iceland there and what they've done. So it's way past that in practice. It is used actually to artificially change history. They use computer models to model the data. And I'll just give you a little bit of a flavour of how they describe them. I won't go into detail because all I have to do here is show that they have been modelled. An automated homogenization algorithm based on the pairwise comparison of monthly temperature series is described. The algorithm works by forming pairwise differences series between serial monthly temperature values from a network of observing stations. Each difference series is then evaluated for undocumented shifts, and the station series responsible for such breaks is identified automatically. The algorithm also makes use of station history information, when available, so as to improve the identification of artificial shifts in the temperature data. In addition, an evaluation is carried out to distinguish trend in homogenization from abrupt shifts. Blah, 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 blah. To see the huge effect this changing of historic data has, let's look back to what NASA was saying with the historic temperatures in 1999, and here's the graph. And as you can see, the 1930s were hotter in the 1999 version. But now let's look at a later version going to 2019. They changed it before that, but we'll take that graph, and here it is. Oh dear, the 1930s have gone cooler. And this is, quite significant. This is the world best temperature record, as it were. It's for the USA, of course, but it's, the same. And it's exactly the same as what's happening in the world. So let's just compare them now. Well, there is the original, and there is the new version. This has to be changed. How has it been changed? By modelling. What is the final effect of all this? Well, it's very simple. This is a graph of the US HCN max temperature deductions from the past. So you can see all the blue ones there. They're deductions from the maximum temperatures in the past. Oh, the red ones, we seem to get those temperatures wrong as well, so we add to them to give a nice slope as per Jim's graph. So taking Jim's graph now, the independent separate teams all coming to the same conclusion. Let's just look at those teams, and we'll take the bottom one first, ERA5. What does it say about that when you start to look? ERA5 combines vast amounts of historical observations into global estimates using advanced modelling and data assimilation systems. It's modelled. So this is the Japanese one, JRA55. I'm only going to read out a bit of it to get the point over. Spanning 1958 to present, the JR55 is the longest third-generation reanalysis that uses the full observing system in contrast to products such as blah 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 and NOAA blah blah blah, which assimilate a very limited set of observations, while NCPR1 uses antiquated model and assimilation scheme. Compared to the previous generations, Japanese meteorology agency JMA reanalysis JRA25, JRA55 uses a more advanced data assimilation scheme, ARDR4 and all that, increased model resolution. It's a model. I think you'll begin to understand by now that all these observations are based on the same data. They'll all use the same data sets. The main difference is how they model them. And even that's quite small, as you see from the resulting graph there. But it's this modelling that is the difference. Anyway, let's get on with Berkeley Earth. The Berkeley Earth mathematical framework allows one to include short and discontinuous temperature records so that nearly all the temperature data can be used. The framework contains weighting processes that assess the quality and consistency of the spatial network of temperature stations as an integral part of the averaging process. This permits data with various levels of quality to be used without compromising the accuracy of the resulting reconstructions. The Berkeley Earth averaging process presented is extendable to spatial networks of arbitrary density for total verifying density whilst maintaining the expected spatial relationships. It's modelled. And now for the GIS temp. Shifting distribution of land temperatures anomalies 1962 to 2023. The GIS surface temperature analysis version, which is GIS temp version 4, is an estimate of global surface temperature change. Graphs and tables are updated around the middle of every month using current data files from NOAA, GHENC and Situation 4 meteorological stations, and ERSST version 5 ocean areas. So they're all linked together, these sets. They're not different. But again, we're talking about an analysis. We're talking about estimates. It's modelled. We're not talking about just the straight observations, which is my point. And the end result of all this on global maximum temperatures? Well, here it is. Well, that's a wrap-up, really. I could carry on with examples like that. The Hadley one, which is the British one, and NASA and NOAA, they're all linked together, and they all use that same modelling, really. Obviously, different versions of the model and their own emphasis, but that's all. That's the only slight difference between them. And what they are not is observations just given to you. And that's not been the case since the hockey stick arrived in about 1999. And from there on, it was just perversion of history. It was just 1984 all over again. So I hope the wrap-up's been good. Still trying to go over yesterday a little bit because it was quite stressful. I feel so sorry for the person involved, obviously, the family. I suppose that's life, and maybe, it's important to hold on to it and value it. So I'll say good night. I'll say goodbye now and wrap it up, and hope to see you again. One thing you can do to help, by the way, really help, is share this and try to get people to subscribe, because if they can subscribe, the word gets out far more, and that's more important to me than anything. Okay, looking forward to see you again. Bye.